Today on Gardening with Daddy Pete, we're going to be talking about raised beds, how to build them, where to put them, what to grow in them, and things that you may make a mistake on when you're building your first raised bed. Hopefully, we'll help you not make those mistakes so you can take off growing a little smarter and not harder, so to speak. If you'll look on our webpage at daddypetes.com, we would love for you to join in on the podcast. You can also go there and ask questions, and we'll try to have those on for you and give you some good answers, hopefully. And another thing, look at our page while you're there. You can sign up for our emails. Take a chance and take a minute and look through our products, see what we sell, look at where we came from, our About section. We're a farm that's been here since 1907 here in the Piedmont of North Carolina, and we're very proud of that, and I think that you'll find it very interesting. So we're going to go on in and start on raised beds, some of the mistakes that people make when you're first building them. And one thing that we do want to do is pick the right spot for your raised bed. A good place for a raised bed would be in a level location. Some people may not have that level location. If you have to build it sort of on a hill, then you'll have to make that accordingly with your frame when you're building it. But keep the raised bed itself level. Even if one side's a little deeper than the other, that's fine. If the only place you do have is a low-lying, wetter area, you'll need to make that raised bed higher. It needs to be higher. Most people use like one board, like a 2x10, 2x12, and just make it one board high. If you're in a wet area, maybe go 2 or 3 boards high. And then the bottom of that raised bed, you will need to put some washed stone, pea gravel, 3 to 4 inches in that before you start adding your soil to your raised bed. So make sure that when you pick a spot, that we're going to look for a couple things. We want it level, your raised bed level, so we can get good drainage. If you do not have that, you're going to have to provide your drainage by making your bed higher, and then add pea gravel, washed stone, something to the bottom 3 to 4 inches that gives you good, quick drainage, and then we'll apply your soil to the rest of the raised bed. Also, think about sun. A raised bed garden needs at least 6 hours of sun a day. And a lot of the crops that you're growing, if you're not growing cold weather crops or late fall crops that tend to be more leafy, more tender, then you can put that in a full day sun. A lot of plants, the more the merrier when it comes to sun. So it's all about location. Okay, location. These are the things you want to think of. What am I going to grow in that bed? Okay, how much sun do I need? Do I have enough drainage? All plants are going to need about the same amount of drainage when it comes to holding too much moisture. Some of the bigger plants can handle more drainage than others, okay? So that's the first thing we want to do. We want to look and see where we're going to build this raised bed. Number 2, don't forget about your water source. You'd like for your raised bed to be close to a source of water. One reason that we build raised beds in the hot summer when we go through the dry weather, the drought, where our plants suffer in a garden because it's just not feasible or affordable to water that garden because it's usually a lot bigger. The raised bed, we can control the water. Remember, a raised bed is there because we raise it up. In the time where there's too much rain, it drains out, keeps our garden going just like it should. And then in the summertime, we can apply water and control our moisture that way. Another good thing about having a raised bed is your soil will warm up quicker in the early spring. That way we can plant quicker and our plants will grow off faster. So one thing to remember, again, water source. How far am I going to have to take water? Am I close to a hose? Can I install drip irrigation underneath the bed? Can I use a soaker hose? These are things you want to think about, because the last thing you want to do is start taking out 200, 300 foot of garden hose in these times and roll them back up every day just to water your raised bed or carry buckets of water. So think about your water source. All right, making the bed here. Do it. What size do we want to make it? Okay. I know sometimes if you're like me, you get carried away. It's either go big or go home. But in this case, maybe not. We don't want to make our beds any wider than 4 to 4.5 feet. We want to be able to access our plants, to weed, to water, and to harvest the plants all the way in the middle from each side to the other without getting in on the soil or the bed itself. We want to stay away from compacting the soil as much as we can. Now, let's just say we're building a raised bed up against a brick structure or up against a building or up against something else. You're going to have to keep that within 2.5 feet. If you're not be able to access the other side of the bed, then you're going to have to cut it down to 2.5 feet. And that is just so that we can access all the plants farthest away. Remember, we want to take care of the plants. We want to harvest the plants. We want to weed the plants. So here's the thing about it. You've got to be where you can reach it. Getting inside the bed, packing down the bed, walking around there, that's not a good thing. We're compacting the soil, and we're actually defeating the purpose that we're starting and even built the raised bed for. So these are things you want to think about. Long, go as long as you want to go, Stop if you need to, turn it, go another way to 2.5, or if we're doing it outside 4 foot, go another way. Go as long, turn, add on, all that's good, but always make it where it's accessible enough where you can reach the center without going into the bed. Okay. Now, what are we going to build it out of? There are so many different things out here nowadays. There's galvanized tin raised bed or metal. There is different woods. We'll talk about that. There are different plastics. There's recycled plastics. A lot of people don't want to use your treated lumber. But we're going to talk about that in a minute too. Let me go through this one. A lot of people opt out for cedar or redwood. That's a very expensive wood. Yes, they do tend to last longer, but it's very, very expensive. A lot of people use stones, they use brick, they use block. And these are long-lasting ways to build a raised bed. But I want to go back just a second and talk about the treated lumber in case you do decide to use that. Some people do. Just let me tell you which is the least one that you want to use, and probably here's the one that you would probably want to use if you did, and this will be the first one. It's the MCA. If you look on treated lumber, there'll always be a label on the end of the lumber stamped in. In 2003, our government changed the way that we could treat lumber, and it had to be advertised on the lumber. MCA will be the markings you look for on that tag, MCA. It is micronized copper azole. This is just a copper-based preservatives. It's for above ground use, so to speak. And it's probably the least worrisome out of treated lumber. The next one will be ACQ, which is an alkaline copper quaternary. This one here, I would not use this at all. And then most definitely not the last, the CCA, which is chromated copper arsenate. So out of those three, these are the letters you want to look for. The one that, if you do decide to use, go for this one, is the MCA treated, which is just copper. Plants require some copper just as humans do the same. The ACQ, the CCA, I would not use whatsoever. But if I did decide I wanted to use a treated lumber, I would pick the MCA. That would be what I would use in doing that. Also, Another thing is that a lot of people I've seen try to use old tires. Don't do that. Railroad ties are full of creosote. I know there's plenty of gardens built out of that, like flower gardens, perennial gardens. But in vegetable gardens, unless it's really, really old, I would stay away from using railroad ties to do my veggie garden in. They were treated with creosote, and I would think that creosote at some point would still be in there. One other mistake a lot of people makes is not using the best soil. Some people wants to use the soil that's already there. They want to go down the road and buy, we have some topsoil for sale down there. Well, we don't know where that topsoil came from. Is it contaminated? Has it had contaminants in it? Is it a soil that has herbicides in it? So usually you're better off in raised bed is to make sure you use good bag soil specifically designed for raised bed. At Daddy Peace, we've got two soils that work super good in raised bed. One is a raised bed soil. And if you happen to be at your local garden center and they happen to be out of that or don't carry that, and they do carry our lawn and garden soil, it will work just as well. It's also been formulated to work in a raised bed setting, also to be used in the garden. So you can go both ways with that mix and feel comfortable about it. Again, that would be our raised bed mix, or if you can't get that at your local garden center, go for our lawn and garden soil. Now, what are we going to put in here? What are we going to put in this raised bed? Here is a biggie. A lot of people get overwhelmed. We don't know plant size. And later on, what we're going to do too, one thing, if you'll continue to keep listening, we're going to talk about companion planting in these raised beds. But for now, just think about the size of a zucchini or a squash plant. They're going to take up at least 2 foot of area, if not more. So you're not going to get but just several plants in your raised bed, and then you're gone. Keep in mind the square foot gardening method, which works good. And good things to put in using that would be pepper plants. Tomatoes take a little more. That would be probably 18 inches apart. Keep them staked well. Green beans would work real good in that area. You don't want to put corn or even okra in raised beds because they grow up so tall. The soil, you really don't have enough base there to hold that plant. And again, you take up a lot. Cucumbers is something. You can do those in a raised bed if you put a trellis on one side of them, let the cucumbers trellis up. They do have some variety of cucumbers out called bush that doesn't take up a lot of area. You may want to try those. But again, if you want to get the most vegetables out of your garden for summer, spring, late spring, early summer, look for tomatoes, look for your peppers, look for your green beans. These are all good examples of getting a lot of harvest, a lot of bang for your buck, so to speak. Now, you can also build that raised bed for your herbs. I know we have a lot of people that grow their own herbs. I do myself, especially my sage. I like to use it to season my meats with and the sausages and all that I make. That's a good one. Do that. Another good example is this. Make those beds for your spring and your fall crops when you're planting your lettuce and you're planting your carrots. Anything that you would cold weather crops, those beds don't require as much sun. You want to give them more shade and give them good drainage. Okay. So keep that in mind. Strawberries, you can make a strawberry bed. Most strawberries are perennial. They'll jump off a runner. Use those runners, keep it in a square foot garden, one plant per square foot. And those work well. So you may want to build a strawberry bed. A lot of people love fresh strawberries, and now they have varieties that actually put on in the spring and back in the fall. So you can get 2 crops a year off strawberries, and then they will have they have what they call a ever-bearing strawberry. And that's the ones that actually go a little longer in the spring, come in and go in the fall. That's a real good deal. One thing we don't want to forget, and this is the big one, do not forget to mulch your raised bed garden. Now, here's why. You add a layer of mulch to that, you keep your weeds down. Okay. Also, you help retain the moisture around your plants, so the root won't have, and you won't have to water near as often. Another key factor. Keep in mind, your produce will be much, much cleaner. Keep soil, when it does rain, from splashing up on your plant. Now, especially that's really important if you're doing a tomatoes in your raised bed. And if you'll go back and listen to the podcast we did on growing tomatoes, you'll know why. That's a big deal. So don't skip your mulch. A couple ways you can do that. You can use our soil enhancer, which is an aged pine bark pine, makes a great mulch. You can use straw. I don't recommend using hay for two reasons. Hay's got a lot of seed in it. And number two, we don't know where hay has come and has it had some of the graze on or herbicides sprayed on hay. Straw should not have any herbicides sprayed on it. It is a fall crop. They actually harvest the grain off of it in the early spring, and there will be no need to have a herbicide on straw. So, and there is a difference between straw and hay, and straw is much more just like it sounds, a straw, instead of a stem like hay is. So these are some of the things that maybe will help you along as you go building your raised bed and using those. One other thing is, don't put those raised beds too close together. You want to be able to get in between them where you can work, you can move around, you can harvest your crops. Okay. So I know I'm trying to save space. I'm going to put it together and my feet will fit through there. Don't do that, because it's just going to be too much. I also like to leave a little clear space around my bed so that weeds don't form and grow up, fall over, seed into that. Number one, it just don't look good. It gives you a lot more room to do your harvesting in, your weeding in, and taking care of your plants. Okay. Well, I guess that's going to be it for today. And if you would, get a moment, go to our webpage. That's daddypetes.com, and look on the front page there. And you can actually click on and ask us a question, and we will have it here for you and try to have you the answer that you need. You can also join in on us with these podcasts, so subscribe to that. We'd love to have you. You can also go on our webpage, and we do have an email that goes out from Daddy Pete's, and we give you gardening tips, what to plant, when to plant for each month of the season. Go on and look at our soils. We're very proud of our soils, our mixes, our mulches. It shows you the bags, the composition, the size bags are all on there. And if you get a minute, just take a second and look on the about. We're a farm started in 1907. We're a Century Farm Plus here in North Carolina, right down here in the Piedmont. And we're still growing the dairy. We're still making compost. We're making soils. So we'd love for you to look on the page and just see what we're up to. Thank you so much for tuning in. And that's Gardening with Daddy Pete.